So hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon to learn more about Blue World Voyages. I'm very fortunate to be joined here by Gene Meehan, who's the founder of Blue World Voyages and a really, really interesting individual in kind of the hospitality space. And I think he has some really exciting things to tell us about today. Here at King's Crowd, as many of you already probably know, we are the first independent rating and analytics service for the online private markets. And as part of those efforts, we like to find the best deals in the market, get to know the founders, dig into the companies as much as we can, dig into the markets as much as we can, and find whether or not we think it's an interesting opportunity worthwhile for investors to consider in their own portfolio. And so we've dug into Blue World Voyages over the past year. We rated them a top deal last summer. And are coming back with that same rating this year and are really excited about the progress they're making and where they're headed as an organization. But we do know that this is a very, very different investment from traditional tech investments that you might be making otherwise. So we really wanted this opportunity to help you understand how making an investment in Blue World Voyages can actually be very different from traditional technology investment, but why it can also be a really good outcome for you as an investor. So with that, Gene, I would love to kick it off and hear a little bit more about yourself and what you guys are up to at Blue World Voyages.
Aren't you guys getting tired of tech, Chris?
Some days I do get tired of it.
Probably should have some diversification. So everything is going great. I'm happy to tell you that. We're doing something that's never been done before. We're taking an existing cruise ship and we're redesigning it so that our focus is 100% on sports and wellness. And what's so unique about that is that every sail that we take will have 100% like-minded people on board. So all of our passengers will be of two types. They'll be either already fit and healthy, or they're looking to become more fit and healthy. And the synergy that creates when you have like-minded people on board is very, very powerful. Another unique thing that we're doing is we're creating a hybrid ship. So our ship consists of 425 passengers plus 40 luxury 1- and 2-bedroom owners' residences. There was only one ship ever done before with owners' residences, and that was a ship called the World at Residence Sea. And my business partner, Freddie Dellis, was the CEO of that company. So if anybody knows how to do this, he does. In fact, I got the only guy in the world who's ever done it before. I'm happy about that. So let me give you some updates on our progress. Most importantly, I'm going to tell you the numbers. So right now, we're pushing 15,000 names of people who have registered on our site who are interested in sailing with us. Because it's a new concept, we had to provide proof of concept to investors. So we've done that, I believe, in spades. And with the 15,000 people, they've all come on our website interested in a $150 onboard spa credit. And a lot of them are coming through our strategic partners, and I'll get into that with you in a minute. But the fact that they're registering for a spa credit gives us a pretty good idea that they want to sail with us. So I think they're very, very qualified names on our list. So that's one thing on the passenger side. On the owner's side, as I mentioned, we have 40 owners' residences. We now have 283 people who want to buy them. So we're thrilled about that. My partner is already starting to vet them. He's already contacted either by phone or in person about 60 of them. And of that group, he feels that he probably has 30 firm buyers already. So what we're going to start to do is get deposits into escrow. And we'll be starting that probably next week. So that also proves the concept that we know people are willing and interested in buying these units. So back to the passenger side, another unique thing that we're doing is we've created strategic partnerships with a bunch of media companies, but we're handpicking ones that have direct access to our market. So our target market is 35, 65 active, and companies like Outside Magazine, Yoga Journal, Well and Good, Hank Haney Golf, and we're soon to sign up a new one, Modern Luxury. When you add up all these companies, they have direct access to over 40 million active US adults. And we'll be commissioning them as if they were our travel agents. So when their readers convert to passengers, we send them travel commissions. So we create a new income stream for the magazine or the company. And they give us direct access to their readers who we know are active and healthy. So we're excited about that. And that's going to start to grow because we're now stretching out into Europe to do the same. We'll be picking companies over in Europe who will have access to active, healthy readers or consumers, and we'll be adding them to our list. So outside of that, as you know, we have a crowdfund campaign going right now on Republic. We're just getting started with our Series A round using one of the best maritime investment banks in New York City. It's going very well. My partner and I will be heading to New York by the end of this week doing some road shows, and we've got several groups interested already, so everything is really looking great. We've got 3 target ships. All 3 of them would be perfect for us. They all are different. They're all owned by major cruise lines. One of the major cruise lines has offered us financing should we need it. Another cruise line is interested possibly in participating in discounting the ship in return for equity in the company. At the lowest price, but would allow us to put more money into the refit. So it's an exciting time and it's going to be a busy year.
So if you don't mind, I would love to take a step back and just understand a little bit more about, how did you come up with this idea for Blue World Voyages? And, to date, I think a lot of people, when they think of a cruise line, they think of, endless food buffets and drinks and kind of the absolute opposite of what Blue World Voyages is. So how have you determined that there's a market and an opportunity to go after, and why are you deciding to go after it?
Well, Chris, I can't tell you how many people have said to me, Gene, my husband and I, my wife and I would never dream of cruising, but this we would do. So I hear it on, and I never get tired of hearing it. But the background is this. I've been in the fitness business all my life. I've owned health clubs, spas, sports centers. So I know the market I'm going after. But I married into the cruise industry. My wife is the largest cruise ship charter in the United States. And thanks to her, I've been on 50, 60 ships already. And what you're talking about is very, very sadly true. There are a lot of people who will go on a ship and just eat their way around for 3 or 4 or 7 days and drink. And by the time they're finished their cruise, they're 10 pounds heavier and all stressed out. So there's definitely a market for what we're doing. We're a niche market for sure. We fit into what's called the specialty market. So what's happening in the cruise industry now is that the big 3, their ships are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the ship has become the destination. So they want you to stay on the ship, spend as much money as you can on board, and every time you turn around, they're charging you for something. So we're doing just the opposite. We're kind of the uncruise. We're looking to do things differently, and we're looking to appeal to a very, very different market. There's 42 million people in the US alone who are considered conscious consumers. That's our market. And if you add Europe, the number gets even bigger, and then you go to South America and Canada, and there's absolutely room for what we're doing. And our plan is to get to 3 ships in 5 years, and we know the tonnage is out there, and we believe the market demand will be as well.
Got it. So now, kind of one of the things that I always hear from investors about something like this is, wow, the valuation is really big, and essentially what you've done is draw up a concept of a ship. At the same time, I want to help people understand that you're investing not only really in a business, but also an asset from day one. So can you explain a little bit more about, the valuation cap and helping people understand what it is that they're investing in that's different from a traditional tech investment?
Yeah. What's really unique is our business model. So as you point out, the cruise industry has a very high cost of entry, and that's why there's only a certain number of cruise lines. But our business model creates an enormous amount of capital up front, so that the sale of these 40 owners' residences, that generates $105 million net of expenses. That goes a long, long way towards buying and refitting the ship. I don't think I can get into the details of our Series A round, but our Series A will be raising some additional capital. You put those 2 numbers together, and we've got more than sufficient money to start this company. But also, what we're going to do is plug this same model into our second and third ships. So when we are ready for our second ship, we'll do the same thing. We'll start selling these owners' residences in advance, and that will create the cash that we need to grow the company. So as we scale up, there's no need to go back to the early term investors and dilute them. The growth capital is built into the project. So, but I think it's also really important to point out that we're not crowdfunding to start a cruise line. I mean, that would be absurd. The contention behind crowdfunding is very simple. We're looking to find 500 investors/passengers who are excited about our concept and want to own a small piece of our company. We are calling it the Founders Club. So we're limiting to 500. And we want to really, in the beginning stages before we launch, we want to survey these investors to get them to help us decide how to build the perfect wellness experience for them on a ship. So if you're a cyclist, what brand of bikes do you like? When you go out in the morning or in the afternoon to ride, how long do you ride for? Do you like road bikes, mountain bikes, e-bikes? Give us some, your input. We've already done surveys to our early Founders Club members, and we've gotten a lot of really good information, and we want to continue to do that. So it's an advisory board, if you will, made up of 500 future passengers, and that's invaluable.
Yeah.
The other thing that we will take care of them. So once they come on board, if you're a member of the Founders Club, you'll start the cruise with a special party for other Founders Club members. We'll give you all kinds of onboard discounts. We'll give you priority booking and boarding privileges. We'll take care of them because there are frequent flyers of the cruise. So, it's a very special group of people, and in order to be in our Founders Club, the minimum investment is $500.
Got it. So talk to me about, some of the challenges of going to market. One of the things I have to imagine is, you're chartering into certain waters, be it the Mediterranean or wherever you might be sailing. How are those types progressing, and where do you plan to have the ship sail?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we are going to be hiring some concessions that have so much experience in this field. We're a startup one-ship company, so we'll be hiring a very successful company that does all of our deck and engine work. They're operating ships now all over the world. They've got the logistics down. In fact, the owner is one of our investors. We'll be doing the same with some other areas of work on board, so we don't have to worry about all of those logistics that are daunting when you think about it.
Sure.
We will sail primarily with the first ship in the Mediterranean. What we're looking for, Chris, is sports. So to us, sports are hiking, cycling, golf, tennis, rowing, running, all kinds of water sports. But also important to us is farm-to-table food, educational, cultural opportunities. And if you think about it, Europe has that in spades. So if we were to spend a month in Spain and Portugal, and then maybe a month in France, and focusing on maybe Corsica, then Italy, then Greece, and then around to Ireland, England, Scotland, and then maybe up to the Baltics, that would take about 8 months. And then when the weather gets a little too cold in Europe, we'd probably bring the ship into South America, where we can find the same type of things. And don't forget the great wine too. Wine's important.
Awesome. So, there's a lot to be done, obviously, from construction crews to fit out the boat, obviously purchasing the boat, and then getting a full staff to be able to kind of run and manage this ship. So you have a small core team. How do you, get all of those things done? And what's your timeline until you're ready to kind of go to market with that first ship?
We're hoping to close the Series A before the end of this year. That gives us the capital to make the final decision on the ship, place the deposit, determine the delivery date, and get moving forward. We'll also, at that point, open up an office in Miami. We anticipate maybe 25 people, possibly 30. That would include a call center. But as I mentioned, a lot of the people on the ship will be hired by concessions according to our criteria. So retail operators, casino operators, food, beverage, hotel. These are all companies that specialize in this work. So we probably will have of our own, maybe 40, 50 professionals on board. But a lot of the others would be concessioned to other companies that know exactly how to do this and do it with other cruise lines.
Got it. In terms of the individual who's considering purchasing your units, what do they look like?
I didn't hear the beginning of your question, Chris.
Sure. In terms of the type of individual who's looking to purchase the actual units on board, which are, could be a couple $1 million,
Yep.
What do they look like?
Well, they are probably second, third homeowners. They tend so far to be around 45 to 50 years old, with successful exits from tech companies or other types of endeavors. They are fit, and they're passionate about that. And I think that's really the driving factor behind this, because you can buy beautiful condos anywhere, but to buy one on a ship that's floating around the world, it takes a certain kind of person. But
Sure.
The market's spoken, they're out there and they're interested. And so the deal is, if you buy one of these units, you can use it yourself. You can give it to friends and family, business associates. The only thing you can't do is rent it. If you want to rent it out, you give it back to us. We'll rent it. And if you rent it for 20 plus weeks a year, we'll cover all of your maintenance fees. So if you could imagine having 3 homes and paying maintenance fees on 2 of them, it gets old after a while. So we think the average owner will be on board maybe 30 weeks a year, either personally or with friends, family, and associates. And the rest of the time, they'll rent it through us and we'll cover the maintenance fees. We think we'll get a pretty good interest in that program.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. And in terms of, once you have the ship up and running, what do the unit economics look like, in terms of if you have the amount of utilization, what does that look like in terms of cash flows?
Sure. Well, that's the nice thing about our model. So we generate an enormous amount of cash up front through the sale of these units. But then on an annual basis are 425 passengers, and we're projecting 80% occupancy. That generates about $71 million a year. So not only does our model create an enormous amount of upfront capital to buy the asset, but now we have the cash flow to support the asset going forward. And our EBITDA on that money should be around 9 million. And then as economies of scale kick in, it'll become greater. The nice thing too for our investors is that we'll own the ship free and clear. With the exception of one of the ships where the cruise line is offering us financing, and it happens to be the most expensive of the ships, we'll have ownership of the asset, which will be worth more than $100 million at launch. So, and even if we do go with this cruise line's offer, we may have a 30% mortgage on the ship and no more than that. So we have a lot of strength on our balance sheet through our asset alone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's one of the things I think people need to better understand, is that the asset alone is actually relatively valuable. So, you get the 3 ships going. As you think about, exit opportunities for investors, do you see this as an acquisition to a larger cruise line? Do you see this as an IPO and a standalone company for the next 10, 15 years? What are your thoughts on that?
I think both, Chris. Once we get to 3 ships, and our plan is 3 ships in 5 years, we probably will be a target from one of the cruise lines. We'll be in a niche that they're not represented in. But we also have the opportunity to go public. And as you know, I just looked at the stock ratings of all the big 3 cruise lines today, and they're all doing very well. So a public offering could be in the cards as well. But that's crystal ball stuff for 5 years from now.
Yeah. In terms of core competencies of your business, so you're going to be, hiring out people to help manage the ship and do all these things. What do you really look at as the core part of your bit? Are you a marketing and branding company? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I have to say that at least in the early stages, we're going to be a market and product development company. That's what's most important, is to get passengers on the ship, but also to make sure they have a great time. Because of the nature of our product, because it's a very personal thing, we probably will have a very, very high repeat rate. And that's one of my personal goals, is to see if we can't get the highest repeat rate in the industry. So because we have others taking care of technical work and some of the other operations on the ship, that allows us to really focus in on product development and marketing, and of course branding. We're very lucky to have a gentleman named Brian O'Neill on our team. He's our creative director. And Brian has won 6 or 8 Clio awards and 2 or 3 Cannes Lions awards, and he's a real pro. And he's taken a personal interest in this project and is doing a phenomenal job bringing Blue World to life.
Excellent. So in the past year, you've started to secure opportunities to get that financing needed through the sale of units. You've kind of built a ton of interest in the brand, and I think you have a pretty clear vision for where things are headed. But one question that I do get asked is, why hasn't the financing been raised faster? And how come, they're not already fitting out the ship?
Yeah. Well, picking the right ship takes time. We have to go inspect the ship wherever it is. In fact, the last one we inspected was all the way over in New Zealand.
Okay.
And you bring a team of 7 people with you. It's not an easy, fast thing. I've talked to many people in the cruise industry who have started new brands or CEOs of existing cruise lines, and they say we're on schedule. That it takes 4 to 5 years to launch a new brand. So I wish it were faster, but it is what it is. But we've made an enormous amount of progress. If the old axiom is true that the seed capital is the hardest money to raise, then we've raised $1.2 million in seed capital, and now this Series A, I think, is going to go very, very well.
Terrific. So I have a few questions here from individuals who are tuning in. So one of those questions is just, hey, if I'm interested in going on this cruise line, how much does it cost, for a week, and what do the trip lengths look like?
Well, first of all, I'll mention that if you do invest in the Founders Club, whatever amount of your investment, you can deduct that from your first cruise. The next thing is that a 7-night cruise will be about $3,500 per person. And that's all inclusive of tips and gratuities. Many of our shore excursions, not all of them, all food. There'll be no extra charges for food on board. Beer and wine with lunch and dinner. And then 3 what we call signature events during the week. Very, very special events, either on the ship or off, where all the passengers are invited. Things that are of interest of the particular areas we're sailing in. So that would put us $3,500 per person. Now, all of our cabins also are big suites. So we're doubling up existing cabins on a cruise ship. So we don't have any bad cabins. So that puts us in the lower segment of the 5-star market. But even if you look at what it costs to sail on a 4-star ship, if you're honest, and at the end of the day, you count up how much you spent at the bar and how much you spent at the casino, you're going to be in that category anyway. So I think our pricing is right. Excellent.
So another question coming in is, if I invest and I come on the cruise line, are the activities or all these other things, are they also included? Or like if I want to go biking or if I want to go kayaking, or is that an additional cost?
Yeah, most of them will be included. So we can't include everything. Here's a good example, golf, for example. We're going to be going to some beautiful country clubs, and green fees could be $250 a head. So, but things like cycling, hiking, all of our water sports, we're going to try to include as much as we can. What we don't want to do is be that typical cruise line that nickels and dimes you every time you turn around. So I think we're going to be a very, very good value for the money.
Terrific. One interesting question here is around marketing. So, you talked a little bit about these partnerships up front, where you're working with different lifestyle brands and magazines. Are there costs associated with that to you, the business? And what other channels are you looking to do marketing through?
Well, what we're not looking to do is be that cruise line that floods your mailbox with junk mail every week. We need to be as green as possible, and from every step of our operation, we're going to honor that. I believe that our direct access through our strategic partners will give us probably the majority of the passengers that we're going to need. We'll also be working with travel agents. So I think between the two. So the other thing that I didn't mention is that our strategic partners all want to do theme cruises, so where they'll take the entire ship. So Outside Magazine, for example, they're talking about doing a singles cruise, active singles cruise, And they've got 3.5 million readers, so they can easily fill 425 passengers. But they'll value add to it by bringing professional athletes on board and make it really interesting. They're also interested in a triathlon training cruise. We've got Yoga Journal looking to do some yoga cruises where they'll bring some of the best yogis on board. And the same with golf. We'll have probably 2 cruises a year where when the ship is situated in great golf areas like our England, Scotland, or the Algarves. So when you add these theme cruises together and then you look at our occupancy, we need about 12,000 passengers to hit our goals. We already have 15,000 who have signed up. And now with our strategic partners, we have access to over 40 million active people. So I think we're in a pretty good place, but never say never. You know, we're going to have to market but we're going to be unique about it. And I think rely a lot on our strategic partners because we have good relationships with them and they have direct access to the people who want.
Right. Yeah. So these themed cruises, it would actually be, you know, they would look to fill up the ship themselves just through their own channel. Is that right?
Yes and no. So we'll be behind them. So if there's let's say we have a yoga cruise, it'll be in our brochure on our website that this is a special week for yoga cruises, and it's sponsored by Yoga Journal, and we'll talk about all the great yogis who are coming on board. But we think that Yoga Journal will probably sell it out, but if they don't, we'll be right behind them to support it.
Got it. And one other question that's come in here is, are there any proxies for cruise lines that have sold to other cruise lines that you can speak to?
Well, recent acquisitions, there's been a very successful expedition company called Lindblad, sold 51% to a gentleman from Washington, D.C., maybe about 4 years ago. Recently, one of the top 5-star lines, Silver Sea, sold to Royal Caribbean. All very, very big dollars. I don't think it's fair to mention the price, but people can look them up. So there's some activity in the market, yeah.
Excellent. And last question for you here. You know, if someone's considering investing, but they're kind of on the line, you know, what's kind of your final pitch to them about why this is an intriguing investment opportunity and why they should partake in Blue World Voyages?
Well, we're hoping that the investors get what we're doing. You know, we're hoping that they're also passionate about their health or want to become more passionate about their health, because what we're doing is very, very specialized and different. So there's an enormous market for it. Sorry. I must be getting a delivery. I'm sorry. There's an enormous market for what we're doing. We know how to find them, and we're very excited about being first to market with this concept.
Excellent. And from my perspective, you know, when we look at businesses, we like to think about things like market size, which is a really big market opportunity that you're going into. Product or service differentiators, you're completely unique in the market. Founding team experience, you probably could not have put together a more experienced founding team. The business model makes sense. You go dig into the numbers. I think you guys have done a really nice job of laying that out. And if you look at proxies of public companies that are in the cruise line space, I think a lot of it makes sense and is really reasonable. So from a business model perspective, especially with you investing in the asset, it makes a ton of sense where you stand today. And then, you know, end of the day, if you put all that together, it's a really exciting investment opportunity from our perspective. Doesn't mean everything's going to work out. We don't know what the future holds, but I think you've put a lot of the right pieces in place in order to execute. And so we're really excited to see where this thing heads. But yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. Take care. Bye.